What if the world's largest ancient cities are still hiding under trees, vines, and mud, silently watching us walk above them, without realizing what lies beneath? Don't scroll. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear changes how we see jungles forever. Keep watching. For centuries, dense jungles were treated like empty green spaces on maps, places explorers avoided because the heat, insects, and tangled vegetation made travel slow and dangerous. But the jungle is not empty. It is a living curtain, carefully hiding stone roads, massive platforms, forgotten temples, and entire cities that once held thousands of people. When ancient civilizations collapsed or moved on, the forest did not destroy their cities in a single dramatic moment. It slowly swallowed them, leaf by leaf, root by root, until even their outlines disappeared from the surface of the land. For a long time, historians believed that jungles could never support large populations. The soil seemed too poor, the climate too harsh, the environment too unpredictable. The idea that powerful societies could rise deep inside tropical forests felt unrealistic to many scholars. So when early travelers reported stone structures covered in vines or unnatural mounds hidden beneath trees, their stories were often dismissed as exaggerations or myths. Some explorers returned with sketches of pyramids peeking through the canopy, only to be laughed at by people who thought real civilization belonged only in deserts and river valleys. The jungle, in the imagination of the modern world, was wild, chaotic, and empty. That belief blinded generations of researchers to what was hiding in plain sight. As technology improved, the jungle began to give up its secrets. From above, subtle patterns appeared where no natural patterns should exist. Straight lines cut through forests, forming grids that only humans design. Raised platforms hinted at foundations of buildings long collapsed. Causeways stretched for kilometers, connecting clusters of structures in ways that suggested organized urban planning rather than scattered villages. These were not small settlements. They were megastructures, built with intention, labor, and long-term planning. Entire regions that were once labeled uninhabited wilderness started to look more like the remains of carefully designed landscapes shaped by human hands centuries or even millennia ago. The discovery of these hidden cities forces us to question how advanced these jungle civilizations truly were. Building massive stone platforms in dense forests requires knowledge of engineering, drainage, and materials that can survive heavy rain and shifting soil. Creating causeways through wetlands demands planning to control water flow and prevent flooding. Managing food for large populations in tropical environments requires sophisticated agriculture, soil management, and seasonal planning. These were not primitive groups surviving by chance. They were organized societies capable of reshaping their environment to support large populations over long periods of time. The jungle didn't defeat them overnight. Their disappearance was slow, complex, and likely tied to climate shifts, resource pressure, disease, conflict, and social change. There's something unsettling about knowing that enormous cities can vanish so completely that future generations walk over them without noticing. It suggests that modern cities, too, are fragile. If the jungle can erase stone pyramids and raised roads, what would centuries of neglect do to concrete and steel? The forest does not attack. It waits. It grows quietly, patient and relentless, until walls crack, roofs collapse, and memory fades. When people leave, nature moves in, and history becomes a rumor hidden under roots and vines. The silence of these forgotten megastructures is not just about the past. It's a warning about how easily human achievement can disappear when society changes direction. As more hidden cities are revealed, our picture of ancient civilization becomes less simple and less comfortable. Civilization did not only grow along famous rivers and deserts. It also flourished in humid forests, adapting in ways we are only beginning to understand. These jungle cities were not small or temporary experiments. They were large, organized systems that supported complex social life, trade, belief systems, and long-term planning. Their disappearance reminds us that history is not a straight line of progress. It is full of rises and falls, moments of brilliance followed by long periods of forgetting. If this idea of lost megastructures hiding beneath living jungles is shifting how you see the world, keep watching. Follow for more buried histories, and stay curious, because the forest is still hiding stories we haven't learned to read. One of the greatest cities of the ancient world were never destroyed by enemies, but quietly abandoned and erased by time itself. Don't scroll. Stay with me, because this part reveals how entire megastructures disappear without a single dramatic collapse. Keep watching. When populations began to leave these jungle cities, they didn't walk away from empty stones. They left behind homes, roads, temples, and systems that had supported life for generations. The reasons were rarely simple. Shifts in climate could turn reliable water sources unpredictable. Long droughts followed by intense floods could damage fields and overwhelm drainage systems. When food security becomes uncertain, even the strongest cities weaken from the inside. People slowly migrate toward more stable regions. And as families leave, the maintenance of massive structures declines. Roofs begin to leak, walls crack. And without constant repair, even the most carefully built platforms start to crumble under heavy tropical rain. As the population thins, social systems that once coordinated labor and resource distribution begin to fracture. Large cities require shared belief in leadership, rules, and cooperation. When trust erodes or leadership fails to adapt to environmental pressure, people lose the motivation to maintain public works. Roads fall into disrepair, canals clog with debris, and terraces collapse into the forest floor. The jungle thrives on neglect. Vines creep into cracks, roots force stones apart, and insects hollow out wooden structures that once formed the skeleton of entire neighborhoods. Over decades, buildings become unstable. Over centuries, they become hills. What looks like natural terrain to later travelers is often the collapsed body of a city slowly returning to soil. There is also the quiet violence of disease and demographic change. Dense populations in humid environments are vulnerable to outbreaks that can spread rapidly. A sudden epidemic can empty entire districts, breaking social networks that once held the city together. When survivors flee to safer regions, the abandoned spaces are left to rot under relentless rain and growth. Unlike stone deserts where ruins remain visible for thousands of years, jungles erase memory quickly. Within a few generations, even descendants of the original inhabitants may no longer know where their ancestors lived. Stories fade into myths. Myths fade into silence. The forest becomes the only historian left, and it records by covering, not by preserving. These forgotten megastructures challenge the idea that collapse must look dramatic. Not every civilization falls in fire and war. Some simply lose the conditions that made them possible. Their people adapt, move, and survive elsewhere, while their cities sink into green silence. If the slow disappearance of entire worlds beneath living forests is changing how you think about ancient collapse, keep watching. Follow for more hidden cities, and stay curious, because some of the greatest chapters of human history are still buried under leaves. Where the jungle itself is not just hiding ruins, but is built on top of carefully designed landscapes shaped by ancient hands. Don't scroll. Stay with me, because this part changes how we see natural forests forever. Keep watching. Many of the megastructures hidden beneath dense vegetation were not isolated monuments, but parts of enormous engineered environments. Ancient builders didn't just place cities inside jungles. They reshaped jungles into livable systems. Hills were flattened into platforms, wetlands were drained into canals, and forests were managed to support agriculture, medicine, and construction materials. Over generations, these people learned how to work with the rhythms of rain, flood, and growth, turning hostile environments into carefully balanced ecosystems that could feed and protect large populations. When these societies weakened, the engineered landscapes didn't immediately vanish. Canals slowly filled with silt. Terraces collapsed under erosion, and once managed forests grew wild. What looks like untouched jungle today may actually be a second-growth forest covering the bones of ancient planning. The paths animals follow can trace old causeways. Unnatural rises in the ground can be collapsed platforms. Strange clearings can mark the outlines of long-forgotten plazas. The forest didn't simply grow randomly. It grew over patterns that were already there, disguising human order beneath organic chaos. This means that what we call pristine wilderness is sometimes a reclaimed cityscape, reshaped by time, but still carrying the fingerprints of ancient design. This realization forces a deeper question about how we define civilization and nature. If forests can be shaped by humans for centuries and then appear wild again after abandonment, how many other landscapes we admire as untouched are actually the echoes of forgotten societies? The jungle becomes not just a backdrop for ruins, but an active participant in the erasure and transformation of human history. It teaches us that the line between nature and civilization is thinner than we think. If this idea of jungles hiding entire designed worlds beneath their green skin has shifted your view of the past, keep watching. Follow for more buried landscapes, and stay curious, because even the wildest places may be carrying ancient blueprints beneath their roots. What if the technology revealing these lost jungle megastructures is only showing us a small fraction of what's actually hidden below the canopy? Don't scroll. Stay with me, because this is where the scale of the discovery becomes almost unreal. Keep watching. When researchers began using advanced scanning methods in the air, entire networks of cities started to appear where maps once showed nothing but green. Straight lines cut through forests, geometric patterns emerged from what looked like random terrain, and massive platforms revealed themselves beneath centuries of growth. These discoveries suggest that ancient societies and jungles were not isolated or primitive, but deeply connected across regions, building networks of settlements linked by roads, water systems, and shared planning principles. The jungle hid not just single monuments, but whole urban systems stretching across landscapes we once assumed were empty. As more of these hidden structures come into view, the idea of how many people once lived in these regions begins to shift dramatically. Areas that were thought to support only small, scattered communities may have supported dense populations with complex economies and social systems. This forces historians to rethink ancient trade, resource management, and political organization. Large populations require coordinated food production, storage, and distribution. They require systems for managing water, waste, and movement. None of this happens by accident. The jungle cities reveal a level of planning that rivals famous ancient urban centers elsewhere in the world, challenging long-held assumptions about where advanced societies could thrive. There's also a quiet urgency to these discoveries. As modern development pushes deeper into forested regions, hidden megastructures face destruction before they are even recognized. Roads, mining, and deforestation can erase ancient sites in months that the jungle took centuries to conceal. Each uncovered structure is not just a scientific discovery, but a fragile piece of human heritage at risk of disappearing for a second time. If the idea that entire ancient urban networks are still being revealed and lost beneath living forests hits you, keep watching. Follow for more hidden worlds, and stay curious, because some of history's greatest cities may vanish again before we fully see them. What if the greatest warning left behind by these forgotten jungle megastructures is meant for the future, not the past? Don't scroll. Stay with me, because this final layer of the story connects ancient silence to modern survival. Keep watching. The cities hidden beneath dense jungles were not just architectural achievements. They were living systems that depended on balance between people, environment, belief, and organization. Their builders understood water flow, soil behavior, seasonal cycles, and the limits of the land they shaped. They created terraces to prevent erosion, canals to manage floods, and networks of roads that connected distant communities into shared economic and cultural systems. These cities functioned because thousands of individuals agreed, generation after generation, to maintain the systems that kept their world stable. The moment that agreement weakened, the structures began to fail, not because the stones forgot how to stand, but because the people stopped repairing what held them together. Over time, pressures accumulated in ways that were invisible in the short term, but devastating in the long term. A few seasons of unpredictable rain could disrupt food supplies. Small changes in trade routes could isolate communities. Shifts in leadership could weaken coordination of large labor projects. None of these alone would destroy a city overnight, but together they created a slow unraveling of stability. Families left in search of safer land. Public spaces lost their purpose. Sacred centers that once anchored collective identity fell silent. Maintenance was postponed, then abandoned. Roofs collapsed, drainage failed, and platforms cracked under erosion. The jungle did not suddenly overtake thriving cities. It moved into spaces already weakened by human withdrawal. Nature filled the vacuum left behind by social collapse. There's a quiet cruelty in how completely these cities were erased from memory. Later generations walked through forests unaware that beneath their feet lay streets once crowded with life. Maps labeled these regions as empty, reinforcing the illusion that nothing important had ever existed there. This forgetting is as powerful as physical destruction. When memory disappears, so does responsibility. The rediscovery of these megastructures forces us to confront how easily human achievement can vanish when it is not actively remembered, protected, and passed down. It also challenges the idea that civilization only leaves permanent marks in certain environments. The jungle teaches us that permanence is an illusion. What remains visible depends on where and how we look. These hidden cities offer a mirror to our own world. Modern societies rely on complex systems of infrastructure, cooperation, and trust. We assume our cities are too big, too advanced, too documented to ever disappear from collective memory. But the jungle cities remind us that documentation can be lost, knowledge can fade, and landscapes can be reinterpreted when people leave. The lesson is not that collapse is inevitable, but that continuity requires care. Civilizations survive not because they are powerful, but because people continue to invest in the invisible work of maintenance, cooperation, and shared meaning. If we ignore that work, even the most impressive structures become temporary. If this final truth about buried cities and fragile civilizations made you see the present differently, keep watching, follow for more hidden histories, and stay curious, because the future is already being shaped by what we choose to remember today.